to our technical session on climate resilient sanitation, applying the Green Climate Fund's CRS Annex to Bangladesh in practice. This session is jointly organized by Practical Action, SNV, and Institute of Sustainable Future. As in the plenary, we have already heard that Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable country in the world, and we are facing frequent disaster including flood, cyclone, waterlogging, salinity intrusion, heat wave. Like it is increasing every year. So this is becoming a regular climate, like we are facing regular climate induced disaster, and the frequency is increasing every year. So climate-induced disaster is affecting the whole sanitation system, starting from toilet, containment, sewer, treatment plant, facilities, dislodging services, and the most importantly, the workers engaged in this sector. So in this session to the examples of climate resilient sanitation experience in Bangladesh that we are implementing in Satkhira and Khulna. And also we will be hearing a keynote from Mr. Jeremy Kolhitz from University of Technology, Sydney, Institute of Sustainable Future. So also the audience will get the opportunity to engage in a group work where your input and your suggestion will add value to prepare for, to planning for a sustainable climate resilient sanitation for future. So this is the objective of today's session. Now, without wasting time, I am handing over to Mr. Jeremy for his keynote presentation, and we continue then from there. So thank you very much. And we again welcome you all, and we hope that you will have a fruitful, engaging session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome. And I'm pleased to open this session on climate resilient sanitation, applying the Green Climate Fund Climate Resilient Sanitation Annex to regional Bangladesh in practice. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the GCF, or the Green Climate Fund, is a global fund for financing adaptation to climate change and efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it's existed about since 2010. And historically, the Green Climate Fund hasn't funded sanitation or wastewater projects. For many, many years, they invested not in a single project. But recently, late last year, they released this Climate Resilient Sanitation Annex, which provides guidelines on how to apply for climate financing from them to fund sanitation or wastewater projects. So it's kind of a list of expectations they have if you apply for financing from them. And that was a big victory for the sanitation sector because it's a signal from the Green Climate Fund that there's a willingness to fund climate resilient sanitation projects if you follow the guidelines that they provide. Now, to be clear, this is not a session about applying for climate financing from the GCF. It's actually quite a complex process, and only certain accredited entities are even allowed to do it. But one of the things that the Climate Resilient Sanitation Annex does is it provides a structured approach for integrating climate risks into sanitation project design. So when people apply for financing, they expect to see that you've taken a structured, systematic approach to considering risks and informing the project that you're applying for. And even if you're not applying for climate financing, this approach that they provide is a simple and a straightforward way that we can use in any of our projects, regardless if it's for a GCF application or not. And a lot of climate financiers, even in ones aside from the GCF, will expect to see some kind of systematic risk assessment process in your application. So it's very useful to learn a process like this for your own project planning and any other future financing applications you might have. So in addition to providing a structured approach for thinking through climate risks, it also describes climate risks for sanitation, examples of adaptations one could use, desired outcomes of climate resilient sanitation. So it's useful reference material if you're designing a project or a program. It talks about both mitigation and resilience in the guidelines, but we're going to be focusing a bit more on resilience today. And it's a useful entry point for project planning. I think one of the hardest things about climate resilience, whether it's sanitation or water supply or anything else, is where to start. Climate change is a very big, unwieldy beast. And if you're new to it, this is a useful way of thinking about an initial approach to managing risks in your sanitation program. So in this opening, I'm going to do a little bit of a walkthrough describing that structured approach that's in the GCF, and then we're going to have a bit of practice, I think, in the tables applying it. So this is an overall diagram of the process that they expect to see. And again, this is if you're applying for climate financing from the Green Climate Fund. They expect to see what your vision for climate resilient sanitation is. They then expect to see you do an analysis of the present conditions, the present day risks, and the future risks and the future conditions. And then based on that, come up with a list of problems and barriers that you think that you would like to address. And then in your project, identify the measures that you want to take to address those issues, indicators that you'll use to monitor your progress, and then finally to come up with a strategy. So we're not going to go through the entire process because, again, we're not talking about a process for applying for financing. We're going to focus on the middle bit about identifying risks and adaptations using this logic that they present in the annex. So we'll go over some terminology. Some of you might already be pretty well versed in climate change jargon, but just to be clear so that we're all on the same page, central concept is risk, of course, and a risk assessment process. Simply put, a risk is a potential adverse outcome. It's something bad that could happen in the future. An impact is something that's already happened. So a risk becomes an impact once the risk has been realized. The GCF Annex uses the same logic that the IPCC does, that risk is a product of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. So hazards being climatic events or trends that cause harm, exposure being the people or things that come into contact with that hazard, and then vulnerability referring to the potential level of harm or the susceptibility of harm that people or systems or infrastructure have. So to quickly describe those concepts, a hazard, the 5 ones that are highlighted in the GCF Annex are floods, extreme storms, sea level rise, droughts and water scarcity, and extreme temperatures. And I think all 5 of these are relevant for Bangladesh. Exposure is what we're thinking about, who or what is exposed to one of those 5 hazards that I just described. So that can be things like toilets, containments, sewers. It can be fecal sludge treatment plants or wastewater treatment plants. It also can be services, such as emptying services can be exposed to any of those 5 hazards. And we can also think about who is exposed. So if there is a flood happening in your city, which populations are more exposed than others? And it might be vulnerable populations. We can also think about sanitation workers being exposed to things like extreme heat. So I think hazards and exposure are quite simple, straightforward concepts to understand. Vulnerability is much more difficult to get your head around. So simply put, it's whatever makes people more susceptible to being harmed. And we can apply that concept to both population groups and to things like infrastructure. So we can think about poor quality infrastructure that's more likely to fall over if it's exposed to a flood. But we can also think about marginalized populations that have lesser capacity to anticipate risks or recover from them, or people living in challenging environments, or they're maybe remote from external support mechanisms. So the GCF Annex asks people to consider these risks, the product of hazards, exposure, and vulnerability, in the present day and in the future. So they want you to think about what are the hazards right now, who and what is exposed to those hazards right now, and what's their susceptibility to harm, and then to do that exercise again sometime in the future and to demonstrate to them what are the consequences of inaction. So what are the hazards going to look like in the future, and what might the problems be if you don't act now? And from that, they would like you to develop a list of risks, so the potential adverse outcomes that are happening now and could happen in the future. So in terms of methods about doing that, and you could come up with very sophisticated computerized models to calculate risk now in the future, but you don't need a lot of powerful computational methods. You can do it qualitatively based on the tacit knowledge in the room. To do the base case, so the present day risk assessment, you can look at historical climate data. Bangladesh has plenty of reports from the government and World Bank that have sort of laid out neatly what are the present day hazards and how are those changing. In your city or town, you might have disaster data, you might have flood maps, so you can see which parts of the town are more exposed than others. If that data is lacking, we can always rely on expert opinion and tacit knowledge. Oftentimes our data is so bad that I think people's opinions are just as good as our data sets, so it's not bad to go on expert opinion. And it's important to consult with diverse groups, especially when we're identifying risks, because different segments of the population, women, people with disabilities, people from different ethnicities will identify different risks. For the reference case, which is your future risk assessment, thinking the future, we can think about using climate change projections to understand how hazards might change in the future. Again, if you have development scenarios based on some modeling, you could think about how sanitation might change in the future, to think about what type of infrastructure will be present and what will happen when that's exposed to hazards. Or if you don't have sophisticated models, just use expert opinions from the people in the room and have them identify what do you think the future risks are if there isn't enough action taken in the immediate term. And then from that, you would generate a list of problems and barriers that you want your project to address. So you might have a way of ranking or somehow what you think are the most important problems for your program to address. And then finally, there's this step of coming up with priority measures and strategies to address the problems that you've identified. The GCF Annex doesn't provide a sort of detailed framework for how to identify adaptation strategies and measures. There's a number of frameworks out there about climate resilient sanitation that you could draw on to identify your own solutions. But the GCF does list what they would like to see for what they finance. And again, we're not applying for GCF financing specifically, so you could categorize this in different ways. But they talk about improved infrastructure and services. They like solutions that support circular economy and integrated management of sanitation with other services. Community engagement, capacity building, policy, regulatory, governance support, and then finally monitoring and evaluation. But you don't need to limit yourself to just those measures and strategies. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a quite straightforward process. You could come up with much more convoluted ways of doing risk assessments, but I think this one is good, especially if you're new to the space. And as I said, climate financiers will expect some kind of rigorous, structured approach to thinking through problems, and this is a good one to start with. So I think we're gonna have some questions and answers now, just about, I guess, about the annex in general, or anything else related to the topic of climate resilient sanitation.
That sanitation needs to be integrated also into the nationally determined contributions in the NDCs. How does it matter for the Green Climate Fund? Can you explain that relation?
I don't, as far as to my knowledge, the Green Climate Fund doesn't have. No, I take that back. One of their criteria for what they like to see is country ownership, and they'll select proposals on the basis that there's an indication that the country will take ownership of the process. So if it feeds directly into an NDC process, then they would reflect positively on that. So yeah, I think that's actually an important thing, that project objectives align with country priorities, which should be in the NDCs. So to be clear, I don't work for the Green Climate Fund either. I helped to work on this annex that was developed. There was a huge consortium of authors, and I was just one of many people that worked on the annex. Yeah, another one.
Just to break the ice that is melting, as we heard this morning. So, understanding you don't work for the Green Climate Fund, even more fantastic that you are taking us through. Blended finance and Green Climate Fund, do you have some nice examples that work well, perhaps, that you heard of? Maybe you don't know the details, but that's also something.
Yeah, I mean, the examples that I've heard of, and maybe people in this room, and please put your hand up if you have any specific examples. I just have thought such generically about how blended finance is meant to work, that if the government, for example, provides upfront capital investment and, say, a sanitation project, that can recover biogas and sell that, or fertilizers from composted sludge, and then a private sector agency then monetizes on the sale of fertilizer and biogas, for example. I know in Bangladesh there's composting plants, and there's the sale of the compost. I don't think the private sector is involved. I think it's government run. I'm looking at Antoinette if she knows, or Tanvir. I don't think the private sector is not involved in the sale of compost in Bangladesh. Is it the government?
Yeah, you're looking.
Licensing is from government. Okay, so then the private sector is involved. Yeah, yeah. So, but how that relates to the Green Climate Fund and whether they look for like co-financing, I'm sure they would reflect positively on it, but I don't know if it's one of the criteria. Yeah, Antoinette, did you want to say?
Yeah, I can say maybe something about it. First of all, that the sale of reuse products is never as big as everybody would hope in terms of the financial equation. Really, the bulk needs to come from tariffs and taxes. It's still good to have reuse. Yeah. The other thing is that the Green Climate Fund is financing the accredited organizations, and there are very few accredited organizations, so governments and a few UN organizations. Whereas for blended finance, you would like to blend the finance for private sector to invest or to lower the risk to invest. I don't think private sector is eligible for the Green Climate Fund, so there it doesn't really add. From the Dutch government, there does exist the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, which focuses on private sector and potentially could enter into that. But what we're seeing very often is that the ticket size, what is called the ticket size, which is the amount of investment where investors get interested to engage internationally, is very large compared to the types of infrastructure investments that are done, for example, here in Bangladesh. So then the only solution is to bring together a range of investments and bundle them together in order to access that, and that is becoming very complicated in a sector where there is already lots of doubt about the sustained revenue that will come from that sector to repay all that blended finance. So I don't want to discourage everybody, but just to say we need to keep on pushing on that, but let's not mystify it.
Yeah, good.
Maybe I will step in. Thank you, Tanvir.
Yeah, thank you. I will share how the Khulna City Corporation is moving forwards, moving towards the climate resiliential nation. So if you see that the Khulna city is the third largest city in Bangladesh, having a population nearly 0.8 million and household is 188,000, and they have 31 wards. As a divisional city, more than 50% is actually the Paka building. You can say the holding is the. So this is the very basic of Khulna city, and if you see the sanitation situation from our SWWC project baseline study, we found that the open defecation is very negligible, and the coverage, if you see the toilet coverage is total 68%, right, at least the basic. But the thing is, among them, the 20% is a shared toilets. That's and this is not actually limited to informal settlements. You may think about this is the informal settlements, but also half of the households they are sharing toilets as well in Khulna city, and only 2% is safely managed. So you can see the scenario how Khulna studies is set. So if you consider that is it risks vulnerable for the flood or extreme weather events, Khulna is actually in a safer condition. You can see from the data in the baseline, but still there is for heavy rainfall, water logging is happened, and suffering informal settlements, they are actually suffering from this one. And you can see the grey water management. This is really challenging. There's the more than 50% is actually level 1. There's the health and environmental risks is there. So we together with ISF conducted a study on the climate mitigation study, for the Khulna City Corporation, and across the value chain you can see the containment actually. From the containment, there's the methane, nitrous oxide, there's the emission is happened, and emptying transportation also carbon dioxide is GHG emission is there, and the treatment plant as well. So treatment part as well, and if you can see from the data is that there's the containment part is really is in risk. It's about 97%. So GHG emission is happening in for the containment part. So if we consider the mechanical emptying services, that's the emptying transportation and treatment facility is in good condition, but due to the containment, illegal connection, not construction of the containment in proper way, that's really is challenging for Khulna City Corporation how to manage this one. So, and the Khulna City, yeah, they are moving forward. There's the still manual emptying is dominating in the cities, which is actually really health and hazard risks is there. And Khulna City is now moving to the safely and mechanized fecal sludge management services, which will ultimately contribute to the SDG 6.2. So SDG goals, so that's they are targeting on this one. So how Khulna City is planning to approach, their approach is managing the sanitation system. So according to their plan is that they have citywide inclusive interventions, like there's the no one leave behind. So they will go together and they have their customer oriented professionalized services. I will come later. And definitely the technological part, climate resilient technology is very much important for Khulna City, and they are implementing this one, and parallelly the regulation and enforcement part is going on. So the containment intervention sites, the Khulna City piloted in Ward 10. There's the DWARS technology, decentralized wastewater treatment system. That's, you can see the previous scenario of the drainage system, and then it's all connected, septic tank, pit tank is connected to the drain. So after that, this is the climate resilient technology. We can mention here how the containment address. So you can see the pictures as well. And for sanitation mapping, they are actually implementing the GIS-based sanitation planning. So all whole cities, they have their understanding of the building location, septic tank or pit latrine location, and definitely the accessibility, like if the service is there, whether the Devkota is accessible to the containment or not, that road width is easily measured from this GIS planning part. And you can see that the green dots are in the septic tank and the red dots are pit latrine. So this planning part from this one, that Khulna City Corporation, they are outsourced transport and emptying and transportation part. They already outsourced their services, and it's a PPP contract, light form of PPP contract, and the contract is 3 years. They divide into the 4 zones, 3 zones outsourced to the private operator, 1 zone kept run by the Conservancy Department. So in total 4 zones and 3 years contract, and they set the target to the private operator. This is called fecal sludge collection ratio, and KPIs, key performance indicator, is there in the contract to measure the performance of the service provider. And the capex, coming from the central government mostly, and the OPEX is covered from the tariff. So customer is paying the tariff while they are receiving the services, and this is on-demand service, right? So safe and regular emptying is very much important from this one. So the service provider, they are actually implemented block dislodging campaign in different wards. 4 wards already implemented in this one, and you can see this for award the people, and also to serve the people of the services. They actually implementing this block disease marketing campaign. For this campaign, you can see the baseline study we found only. You can see the 2% is safely managed, and then increased 10%. So you can see the 2021 block dislodging was implemented, and you can see the sludge collection ratio. It's a jump to, and Khulna City Corporation achieved this 10% from the baseline. So this is really successful for Khulna City Corporation to moving forwards climate resilient services. And treatment part, the technology, as you mentioned, the technology is very much important on this one. So they have their one FHTP, two technologies are implemented. One is constructed drying bed, like I think the planted drying bed, what we are mentioning is natural treatment facilities is there. There is no mechanical intervention. This is natural treatment facilities. And they also have the unplanted drying bed for the resource recovery part. Yeah, that's the thing that the Khulna City Corporation is implementing the climate resilience sanitation system in the city. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tanvir. Yeah, you're perfectly on time. You did wonderfully, wonderfully. So now it's my privilege to share a case study from Shatkhira. So Shatkhira is a secondary town, so it's a much smaller location than Khulna, which is a regional divisional city. Khulna, Shatkhira is a much smaller secondary town. So this is a photo of Shatkhira. Shatkhira has got a number of these khals, drain lines running through it, rivers running through it, lots of low-lying lands. I share with you just a little bit of practical actions experience in Khulna, just to demonstrate some of the depth of relationship and knowledge. So practical action has been present in Khulna since 2012, partnering a lot with the municipality, with sanitation workers, with different partner organisations and DPHE. Practical Action recently has produced two studies, an urban water and sanitation and waste needs assessment in 2023, and then last year, the prospects for nature-based solutions in building urban climate resilience in Shatkhira. So Shatkhira, it is a coastal belt location in close proximity to the Sundarbans mangrove forests. It's a Class A municipality with approximately 1,500 individuals and about 40,000 households. Now, what's sanitation and waste management look like in Shatkhira? So this is information which I've taken directly from the government of Bangladesh's SANI board, their National Waste and Sanitation Dashboard. And some of this data I've highlighted in dark blue because we believe that that is a very accurate reflection of the current context. So fecal sludge generation of about 33 metres cubed per day, solid waste generation of about 44 tonnes per day. Unfortunately, the data that's highlighted in green we don't believe is accurate. Here they highlight fecal sludge collection at 40% and solid waste management collection at 25%. We believe that those figures are probably above what they truly are. And this is highlighted because at the moment, as highlighted in red, Shatkhira doesn't have a fecal sludge treatment plant. It has waste dump sites, but no meaningful waste management processes. So until about 1 year ago, Shatkhira's only desludging vehicle looked like this picture on the left. For a range of reasons, as is unfortunately common, the vacuum truck became unusable, was not repaired, and so at that point of time, all desludging was manual. Over the last year, in partnership with Finnish Mondial, that desludging vehicle has been fixed so that it is operational again. So there is at least an option for mechanical desludging. But again, we need to remember that at the moment there is no fecal sludge treatment plant. Now, why isn't there a fecal sludge treatment plant in Shatkhira? Especially if Practical Action has been there since 2012. That would seem like an oversight on Practical Action's behalf. Well, the truth is, there was. Until 2020, there was a functional, well-operating fecal sludge treatment plant. But in 2020, Cyclone Amphan hit the coastal region of Bangladesh. And at that point of time, the fecal sludge treatment plant was damaged beyond repair and has not since been, it was damaged beyond repair. And the municipality hasn't been able to allocate the land required or find the capital expenditure required for investing in a new fecal sludge treatment plant. I share this to highlight how critical us thinking about climate resilience is. Climate resilience isn't something that's future focused. Here, climate resilience needed to be better planned 5, 6, 10 years ago. Unfortunately also though, in some context, no amount of forward planning will be able to protect infrastructure from a cyclone. And so we need to be thinking about recovery, the ability to build back, resources allocated for recovery. This is all part of this discussion around climate resilience. One very successful activity that Practical Action has done with the municipality is the introduction of their One Service app, which is providing better connection and communication and demand creation for waste and FSM services between the public and the municipality. Now this is only one part, one cog in the chain, because of course if we think about a mobile app, well it does do an excellent job of helping certain members of the society to connect with the municipality, to pay bills, to order solid waste or fecal sludge emptying services. But there is also a large section of the society, those who are operating with button phones, who cannot access that service, demonstrating that we need to be thinking along the whole spectrum of society. How do we make sure that, as well as providing something like a phone app that can connect communities with municipality, how do we also ensure that those living in informal communities also have access? So part of that, last year, Practical Action invested in a large study looking at urban resilience, and part of that they did GIS mapping of all the slum locations, all the low-lying areas, the areas with regular inundation, to then work with them in the upcoming years to increase their resilience. And resilience to what? Well, Shatkhira, as I said, is at the forefront of climate change. Resilience to cyclones. There is potential for increased frequency and intensity. Resilience to changing rainfall patterns and intensity. More intense rainfalls, but for a shorter period in the year. Longer periods of urban heat stress and drought. Increasing sea level rises, and what are the impacts of the flow-on effects between sea level rise and cyclones? So this is the context in Shatkhira. A challenging context to think about how do we support truly resilient sanitation systems. But now I'm going to give you that job. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, at the tables, I'm going to encourage you to think through. We'll have 2 tables with support from SNV, thinking about Kulna, and there are some Practical Action staff who will be able to support 2 tables here. And I'm actually going to encourage our middle table here that has got a number of representatives from Nepal to also think about what does climate resilient sanitation look like in a Nepali context, because your climate impacts and your vulnerabilities and your risks will be quite different. So I'm going to guide you through some questions as we identify together current context, impacts, risks, present and into the future, and as we then think about what are some possible aspects that we can be planning for to increase our climate resilience. So if you want to just turn your chairs around so that you're facing into the table so that you can work together, and I will bring around some paper for discussion. So this is really now passing the responsibility onto you to be thinking around what does climate resilient sanitation look like in our contexts. Yeah, wonderful. So we're going to have these two tables discussing Shatkhira case study. These tables over here will be discussing Khulna, and this middle table will be thinking about a Nepali context. So your first questions, your first questions are to identify the current sanitation coverage challenges and current climatic risks and impacts. So if you want to spend the first 5 minutes thinking around those questions. So coverage challenges, as well as climatic risks and climatic impacts. So again, remembering what Jeremy said, a risk is something that can happen in the future. An impact is as soon as you begin to feel and experience the consequences of. So if you have a excellent drainage channel and you have very heavy rainfall, but at the moment the drainage channel is able to cope with it all, you are feeling the risk, you see a risk, urban flooding, but at that point of time you are not feeling an impact. If your drainage system is clogged with plastic bags and with fine sludge material, so that every time it rains there is flooding, then you're already feeling the impact of that risk. Okay, so 5 minutes to discuss the first question. Okay, everybody, I'm hearing lots of very good conversations. I would encourage you to now also be thinking about what are the future stresses and the future shocks that your town could face into the future. Okay, I'm going to interrupt again. So we are about to bring around a sheet that's got a table that is directly from the Green Climate Fund's Annex. Okay, so this table identifies ways of thinking about climate resilience that might be a bit new. So this table that we're going to invite you to start filling in thinks about what are technical modifications, active management, and preparing for cascading failures. So if I could just have your attention just for 1 minute, I want to just talk through this table. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. Just because this is coming straight from the Annex, and it's a very helpful framework. So that's why I'd like just to talk through it briefly. Okay, so the Annex encourages us to think about technical modifications. So what are the modifications to the design that we can make that will help to adapt them to new climatic conditions? Or active management. For example, if we know that lots of pit latrines overflow in the wet season, then active management would be saying that we actually proactively desludge those pit latrines during the dry season so that there is less risk of contamination during the wet season. So proactive approaches to management. And finally, is also thinking through cascading failures. So how do we design sanitation systems so that if the drainage system fails and there's inundation, our sanitation system doesn't fail? How do we design flexibility into our system so that if roads become impassable for vacuum trucks, the sanitation system doesn't fail? So we're now passing around these tables, and we'd encourage you to think about now, thinking about the challenges and the context that you've discussed. How can we think about technical modification, proactive management, and preparing the system for cascading failures? Okay, thank you. So everybody, I'm giving you a 2-minute warning to finish up your table group discussions, and then we are going to ask for some reflections from some of our participants. So a 2-minute warning. Okay, thank you everyone. There has been lots of very robust conversation happening at tables. I hope you have found it helpful. We are now going to finish just with a few reflections. To begin with, I would like to request Mr. Nur Alam to reflect on climate resilient sanitation and your thinking about Bangladesh and climate resilient sanitation planning. We'll bring a microphone to you.
So thank you, everyone. So based on the topic, our group member, we have discussed and find out some challenge regarding the sanitation and climate change impact and current challenges. Based on the case studies in Satkhira, so we have find out few challenges in the particular location, like poor access of infrastructure. So there is lackings of proper sanitation infrastructure in the Satkhira region, and also the livelihood or income of the FSM worker. There have lots of challenges, and also the cultural practice like cultural norms. Sometimes the cultural norms have major issues of the FSM workers, and also lack of the political willingness and their commitments. We know that in Bangladesh, political regimes has been changing, so that's why sometimes the commitment and willingness has been changed. So it has the impact on the sanitation systems and access of the sanitation of the particular community, and also the management of the municipality. Municipality don't have the long-term planning and the short-term and the long-term planning. So that's why the poor people have to face lots of challenge to get the proper sanitation facilities and access. And also the major challenge is the climate change and impact in that particular regions, and the lack of the enforcement, I mean the regulatory framework and policy that need to follow the municipality and also the community. And the municipality has not enough capacity in terms of the manpower, in terms of the finance, to create the sanitation awareness among the community. Sometimes the community people don't know the which they have the access, they have to know the right current policy and regulations. So these are the major challenges in the Satkhira regions. And another thing is the what will be the happen if the climate change after the 15 years. As you know, the Satkhira is the vulnerable area in terms of the climate change, in terms of the geographical locations. So the lots of climate change impact like the storm surge and cyclone and the water logging and the floods, and the major is the saline water. So if the climate change is happening in the current phase, so the community people will have a lots of impact in terms of the health impact and the access of fresh drinking water and the sanitation facility. So that's why we need to focus on the innovative, reliable and affordable technology which will support the low community. I mean whose income is the lower level, I mean the marginalized and vulnerable people, those are living in the Satkhira region. So we have to consider the innovative, reliable and accessible technology for the particular community so that they can face the challenges. So that's all. Thank you.
And I would also like to invite Mr. Kalanidhi Devkota, the Executive Director of the Municipality Association of Nepal. If you could bring a microphone to Sir here at the table here, to provide some reflections.
Thank you so much. Very good afternoon. First of all, we listened to several other groups' presentations also, and in the beginning I was rather excited after listening from Mike that he said Satkhira, but I heard Sakira, and actually, and I was rather excited to know whether this time in South Asia something is going to happen here. Sakira moves. Actually, after listening to the first presentation of Mike, I was also a little bit reflecting over how we can utilize the Green Climate Fund. Because as you know, there is only accredited institution only can access that fund, which is very challenging. And for the country like Nepal, Bangladesh, it's very useful to find the alternative financing sources. Without ensuring the alternative financing sources, it's not possible to cater the needs of the people, and whether it's general sanitation challenge or the climate-induced challenge. Because unless and until we, take into account this thing, it's very difficult to, solve the problem. So after listening to all the groups and discussing that there are common and similar challenges, that infrastructure is the major challenge for us, and the innovative technology is also the challenge, because nowadays we can utilize the different apps to inform the citizens, and also the citizen can inform the formal sector like the local governments and the other tiers of government. For example, in Nepal we have the 3 tiers of government now after the promulgation of the new constitution. All 3 tiers of government have the exclusive rights of the, they have clear functions, but function, fund and functionaries, these 3 things are not very much matching. So that's the major challenge for us. And probably in other South Asian countries, the similar challenge also persists. So the defecation, open defecation, is also declared, but there is still challenge to ensure the 100% coverage. Still we can see some videos and being viral. That is actually in one point of the time it is challenge, but at the same time we have opportunities always to improve. So such kind of platform and such kind of coordination with the development partners, SNV, UNICEF, and all these IT and BUET and all these organizations are working together, and the knowledge and experience that we have can be useful for other countries also. So we are taking this platform as a very interesting, knowledge product platform. Recently, we also got the opportunity to welcome practical action team in Nepal, and in our office also we interacted, and they also learned probably something from Nepal, and similar opportunities we have also here. So last but not the least, what we should understand is that with the limited funds that we have, we need to maximize our output. That is our challenge, for which we should collaborate. And together we can do more. Like the CityNet has one slogan that we are doing good, but if we collaborate, that the result will be definitely better. Because there was a slogan of UN Habitat back in 2004 when we were studying urban management. It said cities are engine of rural development, because unless and until you invest in the cities, you can't really get the benefit, you can't distribute the benefit to the other communities, because there are always the commuters, that there are floating population, particularly in the city like Dhaka and Kathmandu. There are a lot of floating population, and because they also demand the sanitation services, and they are also affected by the climate induced challenges, disasters also. So the governments should look after that, and the government should have a planning, very inclusive and very much collaborative. And that's how probably we can solve the problem. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity, and have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your active participation. Actually, hope you enjoyed the discussion today. I can give you few reflection from the discussion, starting from the beginning till now. And thank you from the representative of Nepal colleagues. We actually learned a lot, and we have found Kathmandu city is now a very clean city, and we were really touched to see. And as few sanitation workers, they went with us, they actually shared that how come you become so clean. So they were really that was a surprise. So thank you for facilitating us, and yeah, we learned a lot. So yes, the countries like Bangladesh and Nepal, we are continuously facing climate-induced disaster, and the frequency is increasing day by day. And in the plenary, we have heard that how different districts in Bangladesh were totally underwater in last year, and due to several other reasons. It's not that only regular flooding, but also flash flood and Suez gate open by Indian government was also impacting us with heavy rainfall and also flooding. So in this situation, actually, we need to plan very well. And as we mentioned, and we heard from Jeremy, that it is really important how we actually identify the climate risk, what are the climate risks, and also what are the future climate risks that we are going to face. And we need to have that type of indicators and strategies to cope with that changes. And we also discuss about blended financing. So that is really important, because from the presentation, keynote presentation, we have seen that we need to develop this sanitation system as a viable business model, so that we do not always depend on the donor fund as well. So how to engage private sector, how to have blended financing, and make this model a viable model. Our municipalities, our government need to take initiative in that regards. And also we talked about citywide inclusive intervention, which is really important that we have learned from the discussion of SNV, that how to use like advanced technology and GIS-based sanitation planning, and also in a citywide inclusive intervention. So that is actually really important, and how we scale these up. And we discussed about, from practical actions part, as you know, we are trying to bring a digital solution for any problem, and we try to engage local communities, and we try to make localized technologies. So we have built some IMIS digital technology in some municipalities, so that the customer, they can get those services. And also municipalities have some more data and technological solution for this sector. So that is also important, but what we have faced, that sometimes those initiatives are project focused. When the project is finished, we cannot continue that, and also the ownership from the municipalities as well. So that is also important to actually continue. And from the last presentation, we have heard that why political willingness is really important, and how can the local government, municipalities, and also the mayors and the relevant political authorities, their willingness is really important, and how actually they internalize the whole system. So that is, we need to work more with different actors like government, non-government, and also private sector to lobby for that kind of political willingness. And we talked about regulatory framework for this type of initiative. So it is really important whether we have regulatory framework. And after 15 years, what will be the future? What will be the future scenario? We actually do not know. Maybe at that time, our temperature will be more higher. And also, we might have more cold wave, or maybe more frequent cyclone or flooding or water logging. So we need to prepare ourselves considering the sanitation sector from now on. So for this, the solution can be innovative, affordable, and accessible technology, and which is also friendly for the communities as well. And the most important part, the most marginalized people who are engaged in this sector, like the sanitation workers or like other actors, we need to also keep them in mind, that how we continue to support them for their health and also mental well-being, and also they can get proper wage, different services to continue their initiative. So these are some reflection from our end, and from Practical Action, SNV, and Institute of Sustainable Future. We all thank you for your active participation and for your time, and we hope that you enjoyed this session, and we look forward to having you in our next sessions from Practical Action and SNV and others. So thank you very much for giving us time. And also we thank Jeremy for the keynote presentation, and SNV colleague, and also our representative from Nepal. Our heartfelt thanks to you for your valuable contribution. Thank you very much.